Hi there. Today I have something very remarkable for you. I have just recently interviewed Marina Moore Weems. She is the niece of Dr. Robert Moore. You probably know, since you're watching this video, who Dr. Robert Moore is. He is the neo-Jungian based in Chicago that mapped out, with the help of his colleague Douglas Gillette, the archetypes of the mature masculine: king, warrior, magician, lover. And back in 2016, the world was shocked, and I was too, to hear that he had shot his wife and then killed himself. Apparently, he was suffering from some kind of dementia, and the story now is that he committed murder-suicide. The legacy of this work was tarnished in the process. A lot of men who have been doing work with these archetypes for decades were distraught and really struggled with integrating this information. And the reason you struggle with it is because this is not what happened. And in this interview today, I'm going to be speaking with Marina about what is actually the truth. And we will be going through the forensics reports and the lab reports that confirm beyond any shadow of a doubt that the story you have been told is false. So let us clear this man's name once and for all and ensure that this beautiful work remains a beacon of hope, of sanity in this crazy world. Welcome to this important and timely interview. So welcome everyone, and we're here today with Marina Moore Weems. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and the reason we're talking today is that you are the niece of Dr. Robert Moore.
Yes.
And I think it's now 5 years ago, or maybe almost 6 at this point, 2016, that he died under mysterious circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah. And I had posted a video on the Reclaiming the Throne website together with my colleague at the time, Carlotto, and you came and you wrote a message on that post. Can you tell me a little bit more about what was going on for you at the time and why you chose to write that message?
I was traumatized by what had happened, period. And the more research that I did trying to find anything online that was about my uncle, I came across your site.
Right.
And I came across other sites as well. And what people were saying, they took it as truth, what the Chicago Sun-Times reported when they were found, when Bob and Margaret were found, and no one seemed to question it. And I know who my uncle was, and I know the kind of man he was, and I've been close to him since I was a very young child, was in his thing when he married Elizabeth, and we were always close, and more of a connection with me than my brother, definitely. And we could talk about different things. He would share with me personal things at times, and hopes and dreams, and part of his work. And he mentioned the Mankind Project at one point and didn't go on into it, but I thought that would be a later date conversation. But the point being is we were very close. And I was angered at some comments that I read, and I just couldn't keep quiet. And at that point, I think I had already gotten the forensics report back from the medical examiner, and it didn't tell the same story that the newspaper had. As a matter of fact, it revealed that he had no gunshot residue on him at all, and that she had gunshot residue on both of her hands. So to me, that proves already that he did not hold a gun. He did not fire a gun. And I want people to know about it.
Yeah. Well, the lab report is very clear on this. I haven't gone through the forensics and lab reports with a fine-tooth comb, but I was just reviewing them briefly prior to speaking with you, and it's very clear in the lab report that Robin Moore did not fire this gun. It says explicitly, and that everything indicates that it was his wife that had fired the gun. And I think one of the things that would make sense for us to do today is to actually put this report up on the screen while we record, and so you could take us through some of the results. But before we do this, I would love for you to tell a little bit more about, I can feel that you have a tenderness for your uncle and that you have a lot of fond memories that have meant a lot to you. So I would love to get a little bit more of a feel of him and your relationship with him.
I don't know how many people who knew him later in life knew that he had a band when he was young, Bob Moore and the Bandits, and girls were crazy about him his whole life. And every time he did come home, he got on the piano, and it would be like Jerry Lee Lewis playing on that piano and singing, and he'd stand up and be dancing around as well. And he was the life of our family get-togethers. And, everyone just couldn't wait to see him again. And when he would come, he would take me out to eat, take the family out to eat, always to spend one-on-one time together. I was working at Arkansas Children's Hospital, and I wasn't going to be able to see him. So he came to the hospital to see me. And I was able to take a lunch break and talk to him. And, he just always, he directed me in life. And I wish that I had listened to him. He wanted me to be a lawyer. And I went 2 years and took pre-law courses. And then I'm not sure what made me just completely drop that. And I went the other direction and went medical. But since that point, I've been involved in a few things that basically I did all the work and handed it to the attorney. So I think he was right. He could read people.
So you have a talent for that. And he saw that.
Did. Yeah. He was disappointed. But when I became a teacher, which I also taught English for 12 years, like my grandmother, his mom, she retired as an English teacher. And, Bob was a teacher and retired at the University of Chicago. So I just think I had a lot of traits similar to my uncle, and had a lot of dreams, to go far with that, but then never strayed out of Arkansas. And he had wanted me to go out of state to school, and I was just 17, and I guess I just didn't. But looking back, I wish I would have. And but we had that kind of closeness. We understood each other. So when I got the phone call about his death and what they say happened, immediately I said, there is no way. No way. That is not the man he is. He is kind. He is gentle. He's generous, calm, laid back. In no way would he shoot someone. Right. And I stuck with that. I was determined, and that was before the forensics report. And I was relieved. And when that came, so that I could tell other people, but I never doubted it.
So this forensics analysis, it basically confirmed what you already knew before it arrived.
Yes.
Yeah. And yet we are now almost 6 years later, and the result of the forensics report is not the official story.
That's correct.
What's that?
I tried very much to get the police to retract it, and they would not. Even based on the exam, they're the ones that collected the evidence, and but he wouldn't even think about writing another report.
So we have here a situation where some sort of what would you call him, a detective, or what's his title?
He was lead detective
yeah,
Perino.
right. And so he has made a conclusion based on his assessment on site and his understanding. And then you have other professionals within the Chicago police that have done analysis, forensic analysis, that doesn't confirm the detective's story, but the detective doesn't accept the result of the forensics analysis.
That's correct. That is exactly what happened. And the police reports, even before the forensic came back, they were contradictory. The University of Chicago is near Bob's home, where he was an alumni. They were also called to the home. In their report, they state that the gun was found near the bodies. In a different Chicago police report, it said the gun was in the opposite hand than what the lead detective said. So why are there three different reports of where the gun was?
Right.
And if it was in my uncle's left hand, he was not left-handed. And I went back. He would love to come home and just go shoot our pistols out here in the country. And I went back to a picture that when my mom was first brought back from Germany by my dad, he was trying to teach her how to shoot. And the picture has his right hand up with the gun. My uncle was right-handed.
Yeah.
So to me, the detective certainly wouldn't want to say, well, I just put it in his left hand and I called this case closed.
Yeah, so I can see here there is already a lot of room for speculation. And as we discussed just briefly before I pressed record now, I think in this first conversation that we have, because there's a lot here, clearly. I mean, there's a lot of mystery around what happened. And that today in this first conversation, maybe we'll do a second one, but this time we just focus on what is public domain, stuff that everybody has access to, because my understanding is that all of the things that you are talking about today has been cleared by your lawyer, and also that these kinds of reports, they are always public domain, and so there is absolutely no limitations to what we can say about these reports. Is that correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I made sure that before I spoke about these reports, that there was nothing in an agreement with her family saying that I couldn't.
Okay. Yeah, good. Well, that gives us some freedom then to just basically just dive in there, and just to share a little bit about my own perspective here is that, Robert Moore is probably the most important man in my professional life, and the work that he did with the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover archetypes has been not invaluable, not only to me, but the whole world of men's work. And as the founder of Reclaiming the Throne, this map has been really the sort of the master key to opening tremendous levels of transformation and healing in men from the whole world. And we wouldn't have been able to do this if it weren't for this work that your uncle did. And so for me, it's been quite painful to see that, this stain on his legacy has lingered out there in the public imagination. And I just found that it just felt unacceptable to me to continue witnessing this. So I'm just fully here to support you today to get this story out. And I want you to know that means a lot to me and to a lot of other men around the world as well.
Well, I appreciate that you're doing this, because I didn't really know how to get the word out, and felt that if I just put it in a newspaper in one city, what good would that do? So right. I'm grateful to you.
Yeah. And I'm sure as well, just to be clear, I'm sure this work has meant a lot for a lot of women as well, though his particular domain of mastery seems to have been the masculine psyche. Before we move on, could you say a little bit more about what your understanding is of his particular interest in the masculine psyche, and what was it inside of him that made this such an object of study for him?
From what I understood, and this did not come from him, that I think he was so much more intelligent than children in his age group at school, that he was not always, he didn't seem to have as many friends to play with, or, that he was, my dad would often take him with the older crowd and try to teach him social skills at that time. And of course, they were very young and 5 years apart.
So your dad was Robert's uncle, no, brother, I mean.
Yes, 5 years older. And when I spoke with Bob for the last time in September of 15, he told me that it had not been for my dad, he wouldn't have learned the skills of, looking someone in the eye when you meet them and shaking their hand, and taught him how to shake a man's hand. And that, I don't know what the relationship was with his dad. My grandfather died young of a heart attack, but I do know that Bob said my dad is the one who groomed him to become a man. And maybe having had difficulties with that when he was young, perhaps he wanted to know why himself. And he began to study.
Yeah.
And he even, I spoke with an author, can't recall the name of the book right now. I have it written down somewhere. Another man in California, and they actually went undercover and joined an occult to study the way these people think.
Yeah.
And so he really wanted to know what goes on inside the man's brain, and would have done anything to further his knowledge. And, of course, the older he got, it's obvious he had no trouble being a man and shaking your hand, and look, he really grew, and probably from his own studies. Again, I never saw that side of him. He was always an amazing person, you could say my hero, and wanted to be like him. So he was all about studying, and he never quit thirsting for knowledge. So it doesn't surprise me that he has this book that is so valued.
Yeah. That was very clear that he was an avid learner, and myself and many others obviously have been avid learners of his work since. One of the funny things that I remember him say in one of his lectures was that as he was mapping out these archetypes, initially he just mapped out king, warrior, magician.
Well, I wonder when the lover part actually came onto that, what year that would be.
Yeah. Yeah, so the lover wasn't a part of his imaginal world until later on in his life, and that came on board, and that seems to have been sort of the breakthrough insight which allowed the system to come into form. Yeah, it's sweet to hear about, and I can feel through you what a great guy he was, and it's a shame that it ended in the way that it ended. But why don't we dive into the actual forensics report? And I know there are two or three different reports I think that you have shared with me. It's one lab report that involves some gunshot residue test and stuff like that. And then there's the autopsy of Robert and the one of his wife. And I don't know exactly how we will do this, but as I was briefly reading this just an hour or so ago, I was thinking like this is quite sensitive material to read about his dead body and things like that. And so I'm just letting you know, those of you who are watching, that this is, yeah, it's raw, it's just unvarnished truth. And I don't know what you want to focus on, Marina, but I want you to have the opportunity to bring attention to whatever you want to bring attention to. So where do you want to begin? Shall we begin with the lab report, or do you want an autopsy?
I think the autopsy maybe, because I found one fact to be really critical in showing that the police were not thorough in their investigation.
Right. Okay. So I think the recording is going to include what I'm sharing on my screen, though I'm not entirely sure. So let's see here. If it doesn't, I'll have to edit it in later on. But yeah, okay. So here we go.
Yes.
This is the autopsy of your uncle.
Mm-hmm. You can see I reviewed this while before we got on here as well. And if you basically, now it's just telling what the body looked like days after and the rigor mortis, and what he was wearing, and that it talks about every organ of the body basically, and that there was no injury. It showed his scar from the previous cardiac bypass.
Okay.
But if you go to the second page, this is where they get down to the radiologic examination and the evidence of the injury. And of course, the skull fractures and the lacerations, and the fact that on number 3, projectile and fragments are in the head. Now, if you put a gun up to your forehead, it's going to come out with velocity enough to go all the way through the head.
Yeah.
And this bullet was still in his head.
Right.
I think it's noticeable that where it should be noticed where the bullet went in, and it was to the right, basically to the right of his forehead, and where the bullet was lodged was in the left lower part of the brain. So if the lead detective claims, and in my opinion probably placed the gun where it shows in the picture that he took, he said that my uncle would have used his left hand to fire a bullet through his skull, where he would have had to turn his hand to shoot in the angle that the bullet went, and it lodged in the left.
So he would have had to take his hand on the other side of his body and then shoot himself.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to make much sense if you were going to try and kill yourself.
And then laid across his abdomen with his hand still on the grip.
Okay.
But what else was found is that there are no fingerprints on the gun.
Really?
No fingerprints.
Wow.
So someone wiped it off, put it in his hand, said, oh yeah, this is what happened, and case closed.
Wow. I think one thing that I also wondered about, Marina, is there was one place here, I don't remember on what page, but it said something about, no, I think I'm thinking of the other autopsy where there was gunshot residue on his wife's head.
Yes.
But
there
nothing.
was no gunshot residue at all was found on my uncle's hands. nothing.
Yeah, not even not even by the end and the bullet entry.
Right.
But I think there was bullet entry, gunshot deposits or like gunpowder deposits on
Just
Margaret.
right around the hole.
Right.
Mhm.
Which is, I'm no forensics expert, but that is indicative of the gun being fired at close proximity. Is it not?
I'm not certain about that.
Okay.
Because to me, it seemed as if it might have been a little farther away, because what kept the bullet from going through completely through his head? It seemed to
Yeah,
me
no,
it
I'm
might have
I'm
been
I'm
more of a,
referring to her head.
oh, her head.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And the police did not recover the bullet that completely went through her head.
Right. Okay.
The medical examiner went back to the house and found it.
Right.
So, if she then used both hands to place the gun on her head and shoot it, then that close range, the bullet left the back of her head.
Uh-huh. Right. So is there anything else that we should look at here in his autopsy before we maybe look briefly at hers?
No,
Okay.
that's it.
So then let's see if we can let's see. Let's see here. Yeah, the skin surrounding the entrance wound defect contains soot deposition and gunpowder stippling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what gunpowder stippling is, but I imagine that it's some sort of
I
gunpowder.
think it's called stippling, and it's the circular way that it leaves the skin around the head
Right.
when
So
it's
there's
shot
like,
at close range.
I see.
So, he didn't have that either. Didn't
Yeah.
have stippling.
So then why does the report conclude homicide when the actual findings don't support the conclusion?
The Chicago police are notorious for not solving cases, and they have so many cases per day that I don't think they wanted to spend time on this. And in most cases where there has been a homicide suicide, statistically, men do that more often than women.
So they just assumed based on statistics that this,
Yes.
and then they would just, you speculate that they just wanted to process this case as quickly as possible to be able to move on to the next one.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what I think. And they didn't wait for a forensics report, and they are the investigators that actually, collected the evidence. And so why they wouldn't believe it, I don't know.
Why wouldn't the I'm asking myself, why would the police even bother doing investigations at all if they don't even take into account their own findings?
Well, if you were in the United States and listening to the news stations here, the Chicago police are often on the news, and
Uh-huh.
it's there's not enough of them. They're
Yeah,
overworked, and the city is so crime ridden that I think they just didn't want to take the time,
I understand.
and probably had 5 more places to be right then.
Yeah, Chicago is the murder capital of the United States, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, anything else you want to show in this one?
No, really, that's it. Is how the bullet went in and where they went out, and how could that possibly be backed up by the reports. There's just no way.
Yeah. So let's see the, I stopped sharing now. I meant to change what I'm showing. Let's go to the lab report. Can you see the lab report now?
Yes. Yes, I went and I highlighted some of this a while ago.
Yeah.
It talks about the collection of Margaret's gunshot residue first, where they got it from the back of the hand and right hand and left hand.
1A and 1B seems to indicate that she has gunshot residue on both of her hands. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't understand 1C, but
Yes, I don't know either.
okay. And so then the next one here, Exhibit 2, of course, is Robert Moore. And so let's go to the next page. So here it says particles characteristic of background samples. So I guess this just means like general dust particles and stuff in the air, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So here it says conclusions. The results of Exhibit 1 indicate that Shanahan discharged a firearm, contacted a PGSR-related item, or had both hands in the environment of a discharged firearm. So the hands would be in close proximity of a firearm being fired. And it says also the results of Exhibit B indicate that Moore may not have discharged a firearm with either hand. If Moore did discharge a firearm, then the particles were removed by activity, were not deposited, or were not detected by the procedure.
So they had to cover themselves by adding on those last couple of phrases. But if Moore did discharge a firearm, then the particles were removed by activity. I don't think he could get up with a hole in his head and go wash his hands and, or try to get gunshot residue off. So, that's not the case. So he did not discharge a firearm.
Right. Yeah, that seems pretty clear.
And then it doesn't say it on this particular report, but when they did the examination of the gun, supposedly still in his hand after their deaths, there were no fingerprints on the gun.
Well, that's kind of a scary finding, because that suggests a third party.
And I have thought of it. I know that it wasn't my uncle that did it. However,
so here we are in the speculative part that, well, maybe it's better for another day, because I can feel in myself now when we get to these theories, I get a little bit like, I contract a little bit inside. It's like, shit, this is a can of worms.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a real can of worms. And we'll see, Marina, what happens as a result of this interview being posted online, and I think there's more that you have to share that may shed more information on this case. And as we've already agreed, let's just take these in bite-sized chunks. And I don't know, maybe there's it's strange that 5.5 years later, nobody has told this story. And I think that indicates to me that people are kind of cautious of whatever is here. Right. And I am too, I just have to admit. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not going to stand by and just watch this man's legacy remain tarnished. And so would you be up for continuing this conversation at a later stage, if that seems to be in service to as many people as possible,
Yes, definitely. I hope everyone watches your podcast, because this does need to get out. He was a very famous man, even in other countries, and it's horrible what some people are thinking about him, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah, mine as well. It really does. Would it make sense to attach the various forensics reports to the places where this interview is posted?
Sure.
Because they're
I did not mind that at
right?
all. I
Right.
think that would be good. I mean, these are official reports. And so it's not just the niece making up something, you know, as someone might accuse me of. This comes from the actual medical examiner's office. So, and at a later date, we may even show the 3 contradictory police reports from that day that they found them.
Yeah. How does it feel like to share this with the world? I'm sorry, there's some background noise here.
Relieved to finally be getting the word out. Yes, very relieved. It's just painted a picture of him that is so totally opposite of what he really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it must require some courage for you to go out there. Or do you feel?
No,
No.
I don't know. I'm just thankful that I finally have an avenue by which to tell someone that can get it across to many people. You know, I called as many people as I knew that knew him, but that wasn't a whole lot. So maybe people from other countries will also hear about this, not, you know, not just in yours, but I hope you have a great following. I hope people will see this.
Yeah. Well, the Reclaim the Inner Throne YouTube channel as of today is not huge, but you know, we have people paying attention and we're building that now. So I'm sure this will attract the kind of attention that is needed to clear his name. When I shared this on Facebook the other day, there was a lot of guys and also women that were eager to hear what you had to say. And I think it was a level of shock for some of them that even the forensics report were at odds with the official story. And I don't think a large number of people are aware of this. And I think this also says something about the power of narratives that are put into the mainstream, and that we need to look deeper in order to really find the nuanced truth that opens us up into that internal sense of rightness with reality, in a sense, you know, because we can, at least me, but I think a lot of people can just feel something being off. And so there's just, my partner Michelle talks about the signal at the edge of the spider's web. I think she has this from some other person, but I love this. There's a signal at the edge of the spider's web. We don't quite know what it is, but there's just something that's a little bit off. And I think a lot of people had this experience, like Robert Moore kill his wife and shoot himself. No way. Like,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
how does that even make sense? How does that? And so there was this story about vascular dementia that people use to justify this crazy. I don't know. Is that part of the story legit, or is that?
He did get some dementia. And, you know, I guess some days may be worse than others. Even his friend Rob Johnson told me that Bob would say, well, you know, sometimes the word just won't come to me, and I'll be, you know, at a meeting and talking to men and I just can't get the right word. And so he felt that coming on, evidently. But when I spoke with him in September of 15, there was nothing to, I could not tell anything was wrong with him whatsoever. It was a 3-hour conversation and no hint of any dementia at all. And who knows how bad it may have gotten or did not get, because Margaret kept people away from him at that point. Didn't let people come to the house to see him, didn't let him have phone calls. There was even a recording. I think Rob called him and Margaret was in the background telling Bob every word to say. Now, was that because the dementia was bad that day, or was that because he had better do what she was saying? I don't know.
This is a hell of a story. And even though there is some level of clarity that's coming from this, I still feel like there is a lot of signals on the edge of the spider's web.
Yes.
And I don't know that there is a way for this story to become fully like crystallized, so like this is the truth. But if it is in service and if it feels right for both of us and for the world to get this out here more, let's do that. And yeah, that's a step that will come when it is time.
I'm very excited about it. Very excited.
Good.
Look forward to talking again.
Thank you, Marina. Yeah, and just to close off my side of this story, I think it must be more than 10 years ago. I was running masculinitomovies.com at the time, and I was writing about masculinity in movies, because maybe somewhat similarly to Robert Moore, to your uncle, I just had this sense that I didn't quite know what it meant to be a man and that I needed some kind of help with it. And I found that in the movies, that there are these archetypal stories of becoming that happen in the movies. And the hero's journey obviously is everywhere in Hollywood's creations, even though maybe that's changing a little bit these days. But I found your uncle's work, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, I think back in 2009, which is the same year that I launched the website. And I was on such it felt like an archaeological excavation of ancient civilizations, you know? So I got that book initially, and that has been printed in several runs, you know, that book. But he, together with Douglas Gillette, he had written these single volumes on each of the archetypes. And I think they were only printed in, maybe it was just the first print and then they didn't do it again. And so in order to even find those books, you need to go to these obscure websites and maybe pay like $150 to buy them. And I had this, like, I felt like Sherlock Holmes searching for a man's legacy. Yeah. And then I found them, and I remember just like being completely immersed in this work. And for like a whole summer, I just like, I read through these books, and like the work that I was doing on masculinity movies just completely came alive. And so that's why I contacted him, Robert Moore, and asked if it was okay for me to use this material in my work. And I got the only exchange that I've ever had with him back. And I'm not going to read that now. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'll read it in some sort of epilogue or something. But it was just his generous and graceful permission to do whatever I wanted to do with his work, as long as I gave him credit for being the source of it. And I think this is really the legacy that he has, that he had such a generous temperament, that he just wanted as many men as possible to become free through accessing his work, and for the world to become better as a result. And I don't know how you feel about these times, but I certainly feel like there is something very weird in the world these days, and that the world as we are being presented, the world we're being presented is not at all the world that we're actually living in. That's at least the experience that I'm having. And so to understand then his framework, and to have the capacity to attune to the deeper truths and the deeper realities that are way below the surface of things, I think I can't imagine a more important time for his work to have more exposure out in the world. And so, I'm very dedicated to that process with the various trainings that I do with Reclaiming a Throne, and I hope this helps. And whatever future conversations that we have, I hope it reaches as many people as possible so that his work can keep serving humanity in the way that it has for so many years already.
I do too. I think it's very necessary at this day and time to people to study this and not just agree with what's being said to them about masculinity today.
Exactly. Okay. Wow, it's material that makes me come alive with excitement and some trepidation. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it, but I had that feeling inside for years now, and about, you know, trepidation. It's, do I go forward with this? How would I go forward with this? And if I do, what could come back on me? So I totally understand that, but I'm excited to get this out to the world, that is not what happened.
Yeah, I just want to get your story out there, and here we are. It took some years, but here we are. So thank you so much, Marina. Thank you for taking this time to share your story.
Thank you, Ivan. I appreciate you.
Now, I hope this was of value to you. This interview was one I could have done many years ago, and I chose not to because it didn't really feel like it was for me to do. But times change. I wanted this story to get out there, and I was distraught that it wasn't out there. And now it is out there, thanks to Marina. So I'm really grateful to Marina for having the courage. Well, she says she didn't need courage, but well, maybe the courage was needed for me more than her. But I'm grateful to her to get this important information out there so that we have now cleared the name of Dr. Robert Moore. And please spread this information, this interview, as widely as you can. It is important for the world of men's work that we all know that Robert Moore is innocent, because that will heal our hearts and our confusion with the information that we received back in the day. Thank you so much for spreading this.